Hi, this video is for Chapter 2. I'm going to do a quick review of formulas. Most of this review is going to be about absolute addresses. They start talking about this on page 45. So the first thing you want to do is, this is Chapter 2.1 practice. I open this. I'm going to save it to the desktop with my last name. So just do File Save As. And then go to desktop. At Ames, apparently you can only save it to documents right now. And to add last name, just after Chapter 2.1 practice, hit space, and then just type in your last name. Make sure you don't type in the .xlsx. Again, Excel will do that for you. If you type it in, then it ends up repeating it. And then save is selected, so just either hit save or hit enter. And now up in the title bar, it has my new file name. So the first thing I want to do is have totals in the year-to-date column in the total row. So the easiest way to do this is select all the cells you want to add, including the blank column and the blank row where the totals are going to go. We did this in Chapter 1. And then just click on the Auto Sum button. And it automatically adds everything into the last column and last row. To do average, click on the cell where the answer is going to go. Click on the down arrow next to Auto Sum. This again gives you your most common formulas, not all of them, just the most common ones. Click on average. And what it wants to do is average the cells connected to it. I don't want to average the cell above it. I want to average the Ann, Barb, Chris, and Dave cells. So I select those cells, and then I can either click on the check mark or I can hit enter. Now I'm going to do minimum of all the cells in January. So click on the down arrow next to Auto Sum. Choose min for minimum. Again, it selects the cells connected to it. I want to get a minimum of these 4 cells. Now you could look at this and say, obviously the minimum is 100, but what if there were 1,000 people? You wouldn't go through 1,000 different entries to figure out what the minimum was. This way, if any number changes, then it automatically adjusts. So you select the cells that you want the minimum for. It says equals min B3 through B6, colon is through, B3 being the first cell, B6 being the last cell, hit enter. Maximum, I want the largest number in this range. So again, click on the cell where the answer is going to be. Click on the down arrow next to Auto Sum. Choose max. It selects the cells above it. I want to select the cells for Ann, Barb, Chris, and Dave. And after I have the cell addresses in the cell, I hit enter. So then to copy these formulas across, I just select those 3 formulas, get the skinny cross in the bottom right-hand corner, drag it out to June, and then what it does is it gives you the average for Ann, Barb, Chris, and Dave. For January, next cell is the average for February, next cell is the average for March, next cell is the average for April. If I click on the cell, I can see in the formula bar it's equals average, that's syntax, that means it has to be typed this way, parentheses, B3, which is your first cell address, colon, through, B6, which is your last cell address. If I go to the next cell, it's equals average C3 through C6, so it does the same formula for column C. Next cell does the same formula for column D, and same formula for column E. This is called relative addressing, and most of what you're going to do in Excel does involve relative addressing. And what that means is, if your first formula is right, and you copy it across the columns, it'll be the same formula for the next column. Same thing for minimum. First formula is equal min B3 to B6. Next one equals min C3 through C6, equals min D3 through D6, E3 through E6, etc. Same for maximum. The first one is a maximum cell for B3 through B6. Next cell, C3 through C6. Next cell, D3 through D6. So if the first formula is right, the next formula will be the same formula for the next column. Works the same thing when you're copying formulas down rows. So if I click on year to date, first formula is equal sum B3 through G3, so it adds up all these cells. If I go down a cell, it's equal sum B4 through G4, so it gives you the total of everybody in row 4. Next cell gives me the total of everybody in row 5. Next cell gives me the total of everybody in row 6. So that's called relative addressing or relative referencing. The terms are interchangeable, and what it means is if the first formula is right, you can copy it across, and all the formulas the other formulas will be the same. This works great, except in this case. So tax, I want to find out what is the tax if it's total times tax rate. Okay, so I'm going to, I can't use auto sum features for this because I'm not doing straight addition. So what I need to do is make a formula. Formula starts with equals total. Click on the total cell, gives you the cell address here, gives you the cell address up in the formula bar, times the cell address for tax rate. Do not ever type in 7%, because if you do, tomorrow it'll change to 7.1 or 6.82 or something like that. If you click on the cell address, then whatever value is in that cell address will become the part of the formula. So the formula says equals B8, which is total for January, times K1, which is 7%. Hit enter. And if I copy this across, which has always worked up until this point, I end up with zeros because it's B8, which is 1300, times K1, which is 7%. If I go one cell to the right, it's C8, which is 1700, so it's the value for February, times L1, which is 0. So it's actually the correct answer because it's that number times 0. If I go to the next cell, it's D8, so it goes from B8 to C8 to D8, times M1. The problem is it goes to K1, then L1, then M1. So to fix this, you do not type 7% all the way across. What you do is you make the cell that shouldn't move, which is K1, absolute. So what you're going to do is say it's going to be B8 times K1, C8 times K1, D8 times K1, and the cell that should not move is the cell that's made absolute. So I'm going to delete these other cells just to keep it cleaner. Click on the cell that has the formula and edit it in the formula bar. So B8 is this cell times K1, this cell. This is the cell that shouldn't move. So click on the cell address K1 in the formula bar and hit F4. And what F4 does is it changes it to $K, $1. That means only go to column K, only go to row 1. If I hit F4 again, it changes it to K $1, which means go to any column but only row 1. If I hit F4 again, it's $K1 right up here, which means go to only column K but any row. And if I hit F4 again, it's just K1, which is relative. And hit F4 again, it's $K, $1. So every time you hit F4, it cycles through $K, $1, K $1, $K1, K1, and $K, $1. If you hit it too many times, just keep hitting it till it goes back around. You could also type $K, $1, but I think hitting F4 is easier. This is the correct formula. Hit enter. So my first answer for January is still 91. That's fine. Make sure you fix it in January. Do not just fix it in February, March, April, May, because if you do, and then somebody comes along and changes it in 6 months, then your first one will be wrong and the rest of them will be right. So make sure all the formulas for the entire row or the entire column are correct. So now it's B8 times $K, $1, meaning K1 is absolute. If I copy this formula across, my new and improved, in B13, it's B8 times $K, $1, so it's 1300 times 7%. Click on the next cell, is C8, so it goes to the next cell, relative cell, times K1. Next cell, D8 times K1. Next cell, E8 times K1. Next cell, F8 times K1. And next cell, G8 times K1. So I want it to go to the next total for the next month, but I don't want K1 to keep moving. So the absolute address is the cell address that you don't want to move. People sometimes use mixed references. That would be the K $1 or the $K1. I haven't seen people use that a lot, but you use absolute addresses a lot. Anytime you're multiplying by one certain value, usually multiplication, tax rates, interest rates, things like that, when we do if statements, you'll definitely be using absolute addresses. And that is kind of an overview of absolute addresses. Thanks.